welcome back, Tennos. I've been live streaming Warframe here on YouTube and on Twitch for the last 3 weeks from Monday to Friday, and I'm pretty much approaching 100 hours in the game. My video last week was my first impressions of a 12-year-old game, my gut reaction to Warframe, how incredibly wrong I was about the game, how it has pleasantly surprised and, to be honest, shocked me with how good some of the systems are, how good the in-game storytelling is. I mean, that's just like, I was hesitant to say it was better than Halo because I kind of discovered Halo in my 30s and thought it was just such an incredible story. And then Warframe's come along. I'm like, man, this is pretty good. This is like getting up there. By the way, I've just started New War. If you want to tune in live, make sure you do whatever. Click the bell, notifications, join the streams. I'm going to be finishing New War. I've only done 3 hours of it, and that is blowing my mind. Anyway, getting off topic. My last video last week was my first impressions. This time I want to focus on the new player experience, because when I think of the new player experience, I think of some of the barriers to entry, the barriers to get people into Warframe, and I think about things that might put people off and why they would leave. So as I approach 100 hours in the game, like, what are the kind of things I think might put people off? And this comes from a place of not negativity. Like, I want you to play Warframe. This comes from a place of like, I want you to play Warframe, watch out for these things, and don't let them put you off the game. Come join the cult. Editing Myelin here. I forgot to say I'm using some incredibly basic footage in the background. I started a new account just to capture this footage, so there are no spoilers. I know the game is 12 years old, but just in case you are here because you might be a new player to Warframe, no spoilers in the background. Also, I use some words that veterans will 100% know what I'm talking about. New players are going to have no idea, but hopefully the language is descriptive enough that you understand some of the core concepts I am talking about. All right. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is kind of in 3 parts: volume, depth, and then direction. I think the first thing you notice when you start playing Warframe is that it feels like a game that has been around for 12 years. There is volume. There are multiple ways to play the game. There are multiple activities. There are, as far as I'm concerned, a bazillion systems stacked on top of each other with a whole bunch of different currencies. I think a good way to talk about this like category I want to talk about, volume, depth, and direction, is the mod system. Okay, so out of all the things all the systems you could look at, we have a mod system. All right, let's hone in on that. Does it have depth? Yes, there is a lot of depth to the mod system. At first glance, it doesn't feel like that, but as you keep playing the game, it keeps stacking layers upon layers upon layers. When you first look at the mod system, you're like, oh, okay, like mods have a capacity, and as I upgrade my weapons and my Warframe, they only have a limited amount of capacity, meaning I can only put so many mods on them. And then you realize you can upgrade mods and they get more powerful, but also take more capacity. Then you realize you can upgrade the weapon or Warframe to increase its capacity again. Then you realize there's like these element systems to it. So yes, it has depth to it. And there's even more depth to it that I haven't come across yet after 100 hours. I've only got like 1 Riven mod. There's also something called corrupted mods. I have no idea what they do yet. So like a huge amount of activities, huge amount of systems. You hone in on one. There's a whole bunch of depth to it. And then you look at the direction that you're given with it. And I think this perfectly illustrates a potential barrier for people getting into Warframe. When you first get into the mod system, Otis is like, oh, a lot of people find this complicated, but you'll be right, or something like that. I don't know why Otis is Australian, but he is now. And then proceeds to say nothing else. Like, just work it out. But it actually does set the pace for what to expect in the game, which is like, well, we may point you in the right direction. Not even that. You're expected to go through menus, read the weakness of all streamers. You're going to have to go through a menu, actually try to read it. You're not going to always understand it, but you need to play around a little bit to work it out, right? There's no real tooltips and pop-ups that will highlight things where you should pay attention to work it out. You just got to kind of get there yourself. And that direction is very much player driven. You have to lead the learning. You have to be willing to learn. It's why a lot of people refer back to the wiki and say that it's almost part of the experience to have a wiki open to understand how to use your systems. Of course, this is a double-edged sword because this is what kind of I love about games. What I look for in games as I get older is I want that volume of activities. I want that spice of life to do different things to keep the game moving along at a pace. And Warframe does a really good job of that. Anytime you think you might be getting a little bit bored, it just throws in a curveball and all of a sudden you're doing something completely different and you're like, wow, that's kind of fun. So you want that volume. You of course want that depth too. That's what keeps you playing. That's what keeps you that power fantasy going on. You want deep and complex systems, and you also want autonomy. There's been many times that I'm like, shut up! Don't tell me how to play the game. I want to play it how I want to play it. So it gives a player all those things, but from a new player's perspective, you can very easily fall into the game I feel overwhelmed, the game is too complicated, and it's very easy to be like, this game is way too grindy. There's too many currencies and too many things to do and too much time investment to get anywhere. And that can definitely be a turn-off. So, what do you do about the sheer volume of things you can do in Warframe, the level of depth that you have in all those activities and systems, and the game not giving you a whole lot of direction apart from just the campaign? Like, hey, this is the campaign. You can go through the campaign, I guess. We might come back to campaign as its own category. We'll see. Right. Solutions. Now, I have had a pretty different experience because I have been streaming in front of hundreds of people that want to give me the answer. And I think some people might say, well, a good solution is to get a friend who plays Warframe to show you the systems, to show you things. I think that can be hit and miss. It probably would help in a lot of cases, but maybe I'm skewed by streaming this, but in a lot of cases, people want you to play the game with how they experienced it. And I mean this without any offense. A lot of people, like veterans, have kind of forgotten what they know. When you get systems this deep and complex, you kind of forget. Here's a good example. Railjack. All right. I was using the Railjack. God, I don't want to use spoilers. Okay. I was using Railjack. Someone's like, why aren't you boosting? Use your booster. I'm like, I'm pressing shift. I'm not boosting. And everyone's like spamming. You shift. Oh, he hasn't upgraded it yet. Do you know what I mean? Like, you forget like where you start after so many years. So I think getting a friend could be hit or miss. I do think you should try solo first and see if you can work some stuff out. And then when you've got questions, go to the friend and ask very specific questions. Okay. So half solution. I think a lot of the ways to deal with this probably barrier for new players comes to like your expectations of how to play this game. And in general, taking your time, being inquisitive about nearly everything, reading, which is hard. For someone who did law for 10 years, I'd still struggle at it. Actually going through and reading menus, but not getting lost in the source. There's so many names of different things. You're not trying to understand it all at once. You could try to make a mental note of where something might be in case it comes up later. A good example of this is the system that you can do like once a week to get Endo, which is a currency to upgrade your mods. And it's in the mod menu system. If you don't have a really good look at the mod menu system, you probably missed it. But as you're playing the game, you find these materials that you have to pick up. So the game's like, pay attention to this thing. You have to pick it up. And you pick it up, and later on you realize that you can basically trade them in for a currency to upgrade your mods. But if you hadn't really looked at the mod menu system and kind of inquisitive about that in general, you would have missed it and not known it was a thing. And to be honest, if I didn't have Twitch chat and YouTube chat, I probably would still not know it's a thing, maybe. Or what would have happened was I would have ran out of Endo, the currency to level up mods, and then Googled how to get Endo. Go to Wiki, how to get best Endo farm. But I do think that's the type of game it is. Like, I think the way to expect to play this is to come up to a barrier and then have to Google the answer. And if that's not your type of game, I think you're going to be turned off by Warframe. But if you go in expecting that I'm going to have to do a little bit of research here to understand this and to work it out, then I think you'll have a much better time. The other thing I think is good from like a player behavior point of view to go in with playing Warframe is to kind of set goals and work your way backwards. There are so many currencies in this system and vendors and reputation systems. It is almost impossible to work out which way to go to get something. You really need to pick something. I want to craft this weapon or this item. Like recently I crafted a necromech and I wanted to do that. So you look at what it requires, the blueprints it requires, and then you hover over it and you see where that is. And then you go to that person and then there's multiple layers to it. Like often you have to get a blueprint, which then requires you to get reputation, which then requires you to get currency, which then requires you to go back to another rep. And you kind of just need to pick a goal and work your way backwards slowly. And the system start to unfold that way. But the game never really guides you in doing that. It just kind of expects that that's the approach you might play because there's too many things going on to work it out otherwise. So that's what I would also recommend. I think a good question would be, and I'm interested to hear what veterans have to say about this, like, can digital extremes make this a better experience? Can they do anything different to make this not so overwhelming? I had a couple ideas. I've been told that did they purchase the wiki? It doesn't have ads on it now. Like they've got like official like Warframe wiki. I have seen in other games, they have the wiki linked into the game itself. So you can click on stuff and it'll bring up a wiki page and you can read through more. I think that could be a way to encourage that like self-learning behavior in gamers. This game's not really going to have tooltips pop up and really guide you through some of these systems. You're going to have to put your head in, poke around and try to learn it, come against barriers and then start Googling or using the wiki to work your way through. So maybe that could be a way to encourage that kind of behavior. I do think, and maybe I miss it, I do think there should be an optional quest to that encourages the open world loop a little bit more, because that was really confusing for me. Just the idea of going to the open world areas, checking out all the vendors there, earning reputation, and how that then mixes into your normal crafting. I think that seems like a pretty common feedback loop. I've had to do it for my amp. I've had to do it with my necromech. And it's a little bit different each planet. But once I kind of understood the loop they were trying to get you to do, it was much easier to go through. So maybe an optional quest would be nice to encourage understanding the open world loop aspect of things. I will say, I do think that the way they layer systems is very good for a new player. You usually get introduced at the base level, and then you play another 10 hours, and then a new system's put on top of that, and you play another 10 hours, and a new system's put on top of that. I think that works really well. I wouldn't obviously change that at all. I think that's something they do really well for new players, is they layer the systems. They give you the base first, the foundation, and they slowly start building on top of it. Not bad. There you go. This category has been volume, depth, and direction. Okay, let's talk about the campaign experience for new players. This is probably the most guided aspect of the game because it's like, it's something obvious that you click on at the top of your star map and it directs you to things you should be doing. Once again, you get a full 12 years of gameplay in the campaign, and you get very satisfying mini conclusions. As a new player, there is a lot of lore there, and a lot of it is confusing, but I think they do a really good job at giving you satisfying conclusions where you understand what's going on, and most importantly, you play the story. I know it's really revolutionary to think about actually playing a story in a video game, but a lot of games just dump exposition on you, require you to read a bunch of indexes or do other bits and pieces, maybe show you a cutscene, but I think that's the most impressive thing about Warframe. You play the story, and I did not expect that to happen. I did not expect a campaign experience in a loot and shooter. Go watch my other video if you want to see me gush a bit more about that. So that's all the great things, and it's relatively guided. But I do think there's one big trap, I think, when it comes to the new player experience with the campaign, and that is it's so good. You just want to slam through it. I just want to keep doing it. I just want to do the campaign. I want to go through all the campaign. And the issue with that is there are some missions that require you, they don't require you. Some missions are much easier if you've leveled certain aspects of your Warframe and certain pieces of equipment. And the game doesn't force you to do those levels. So what happens, you get to that mission and I was literally screaming, why am I doing no damage? The chat's like, lol, you're an idiot. You rushed a campaign, didn't level the piece of equipment that you're currently using, And that's why you're doing no damage. And I'm like, I didn't even know I could level it. I didn't even know I could mod it. So part of it is, as a new player, I think the expectation is pretty much everything you can get probably has its own mod system, its own leveling system, its own activities. And just expect that to be like the baseline for anything you get in the game. And then if you get to a boss or a campaign mission, you're like, I'm doing no damage. What's going on? It's probably because you didn't realize you could level the thing you're using. Okay? So I think it could be improved, because I didn't even know I could level some of this stuff. I think it could be improved with like an optional quest. Like when you got the campaign, kind of give you an option. Hey, maybe level this. And then I would ignore that optional quest, go to the campaign. But when I failed the campaign, I would realize, crap, maybe I should have done the optional quest. So I think that could help. Because they do actually give you this advice on, it's not the wiki, it's like Warframe quest guide or something. It actually says this. It's like tips and tricks, level this thing before you go on this campaign. But the game doesn't actually tell you to do that. So I think a little prompt to be like an optional quest under the main quest, like maybe you should look into this, and then players would ignore that. And then when they feel the barrier, they could be like, oh, I probably should do the optional quest. The other thing I think we need to talk about when it comes to campaign is the order of the campaign. Now, I don't even know exactly what's going on here because I'm only up to the new war, but when you go through the campaign, I get to this quest that's called the Duviri Paradox. And literally 100%, it's the only thing chat has ever agreed on. Every comment agrees on it. They're like, don't do this quest yet. Do this other one first and then do this one. I think that's pretty bad for a new player experience, and I don't know the reasons why everyone says not to do that yet. I don't know why it comes up as something you should do first before doing other quests that come later on. Feel like maybe I can revisit this topic when I actually know more information about it, but once again, there is a Warframe quest guide that recommends the order of quests you should do, and I think as a new player, that should be solidified a bit better to guide you through it. I think that would really help, and I think the optional quest stuff to level certain pieces of equipment before doing the quest, I think is also a good idea. Or maybe they can put those optional quests as part of like the junctions, right? So you just get a little information about, I should level this before moving on to the next area, because I really do like that system. I think the junction system is really good. You get to a planet before you can move on to the next planet. There's like a junction with a little Warframe boss, and you have to complete certain things before you get there. And it's kind of like a checklist of like, you should be at this stage in the game before moving on. And I feel like the parts that I fell down was that campaign. Not that I think any of these solutions are going to be ever implemented. I don't think that's a bad thing. Like, the game's 12 years old, and like, I know they're very good at listening to the players, but I'm just spilling my thoughts, what I think would have helped me as a new player. Editing Myelin here again. Yeah, I forgot to talk about the gameplay and monetization. Just two tiny things that might be important for a new player experience in 2025 for Warframe. Anywho, the gameplay in general, the power creep and loop is very, very satisfying. You start off as a little baby Tenno, using your sword, using your guns primarily, every now and then using your ability and going, oh, that's pretty cool. Can't wait to use more abilities more often. And then you slowly start modding, you slowly start leveling up. And then all of a sudden, I saw probably a really good meme, and it was something like, if you see the enemy, you're doing it wrong, because eventually you get to the point where your screen has got enemies on it, there's numbers flying everywhere, and you just kind of slamming buttons and powering through it. And so that is very satisfying. It reminds me a lot of PoE, Path of Exile 2, which I played a lot of, where you slowly leveling your character, a very methodical gameplay, and then eventually you hopefully have a build and you just go bang, push a button, hopefully everything dies. Now, I know that's not the case for every Warframe, because there's lots of different variabilities in how you play with different Warframes and how you do different builds. But as a new player, that's definitely like how I felt. Is like, started off very slow, very methodical, really wanting to use my abilities, can't wait to use them a bit more, and then slowly leveling up to being able to like kind of slam group of enemies. Oh, that was really satisfying. And I think the best thing is, at any point when the gameplay loop gets a little bit stale, like, okay, I am kind of over pressing ability 1, ability 2, ability 3 now, and like comboing these, and I'm feeling a bit bored, you're usually at the next stage of like building a new Warframe, building a new weapon, and there's enough things to rotate through. It keeps it really fresh, and that's kind of really the main appeal on gameplay, is to be crafting these new weapons, new Warframes, new equipment, and cycling through them and leveling them up. One of the things I would criticize is I really did not understand the mastery rank system. I don't know if it really tells you very well. I know chat had to kind of educate me on this, and this kind of really is the main loop, which is you craft a weapon, a piece of equipment, a Warframe, and you level it up to its max rank, and this allows your master rank, almost your character level, to go up to allow you to wield better things. And I just don't feel like that was very well explained. Maybe I was distracted by streaming it, and so be aware of that. I think, like, as a main core loop of the game, that should have been more obvious. Maybe I'm a dumb. Anyway, it's how I felt. I do think, though, they do a really good job at layering different gameplay loops into the game and giving you lots of variety. I'm not going to tell you what all those variety things are, but I do think there is a risk for you to play the game and think, I know how this game is. It's, you run these missions, you run these nodes, and it's kind of over. And I think you could leave before you really see some stuff developing. It is a slow burn, and you're slowly stacking these gameplay loops on top of each other. And I think that's the main risk for new players, is probably leaving before they see some of these things. So if you like it enough, keep rotating through your weapons, your Warframes, keep leveling up, because I think the payoff is really worth it, because the variety in gameplay continues to change 20 hours in, 30 hours in, 40 hours in, 50 hours in, 100 hours in. It is literally still changing for me 100 hours into the game. Okay, that's my thoughts on the gameplay. Very, very nice. Monetization, just that little thing. This is truly a free-to-play experience. It is shocking how good the free-to-play is, because you can literally earn everything in the game except for Tenogen. It's like a creator-sponsored thing, but you can go and buy Warframes with real money, or you can earn them and you can craft them. Same with the weapons and all other bits and pieces. And not only that, what I think is incredibly generous is the fact that you can go out and farm and trade with other players and actually get the premium currency. A lot of games don't give that to you. A lot of games will have like the play currency, like the free-to-play currency, and like the real money currency, right? You play a game, like you can only get, and this part's kind of limited. All right, you can get bright dust, but you can only get so much bright dust, and eventually you're going to have to open your wallet to purchase something else, okay? Whereas Warframe just kind of says, yeah, you can get that real world money essentially in the game to buy whatever you want if you played enough. And I think that makes an incredible difference when it comes to cosmetics and it comes to everything else. Is like, you can pay to go quicker if you don't want to put the time in. But if you want to basically keep to a free-to-play experience, there's so much to do that you can get all those things without paying a cent. And that is incredibly impressive. The other part, I guess, with the monetization comes down to crafting. And I think this will be a shock for new players, because I hadn't really experienced anything like this too. And, when you craft story-based items, they're almost instant. But when you start crafting weapons, I think weapons are they always 12 hours? There's like a 12-hour wait. And I think that can be a little bit shocking at first. And when you craft Warframes, can wait 3 days for those things to be ready. So you have all the materials, you craft a thing, and you're like sitting there twiddling your thumbs. At first, I was like, I don't like this, but I actually really started to enjoy it and enjoy the pace of it, because what I would do was you just always have something cooking, always have something crafting. You get a new Warframe, you put something else in the oven, let that craft. So when you've maxed out, that gun, that Warframe, you've got something new to play with almost straight away. And once you get that kind of rhythm with getting your mastery ranks, trying new stuff out, I think is like really, really rewarding. And I have no issue with having to pay real money to rush those crafting things. And I have not done any rushing except for one thing, and I kind of regret it. I rushed a piece of equipment that was going to take 3 days to make because I wanted to get to the story, the new war, and I kind of didn't need to do that. I could have waited over the weekend and been fine. So I have no issue with how that crafting system is and how it was a bit odd at first, but I think when you have a game that gives you so much, you're just happy to accept stuff like that. That's kind of how I feel about it anyway. I'm just happy to accept that I have to wait some time to get new gear, and the trade-off is of getting a great game that is truly free to play. All right, the last topic I want to talk about is veteran knowledge. Of course, this game has been around for 12 years, and there's 12 years of knowledge for you to catch up on, and you can't consume it all at once, unfortunately. And a lot of it just doesn't make sense when you first start playing. I just didn't even understand the language people were using, because this game has basically its own language, let's face it. I didn't know if people were talking about a vendor, a material, a planet, a node. They're like, do this and do that and do this thing. I'm like, I don't know what you're saying. And it just takes a long time for some of that information to sink in. Of course, there's also like this aspect of like most efficient farming techniques. Like I was farming something and everyone like, this will take forever. And I was doing it the slow, long way to understand what that experience is like. I was mining. And someone's like, do you know you can go to this obelisk on Deimos and you can actually get materials from it? And then if you use this to fly around, it actually becomes a lot easier. And then once you farm these areas, then you can actually, and then we actually got all the materials I needed in like 45 minutes. How would I get that information as a new player? Don't know. This is definitely, I mean, are you meant to have that? I think it's also hard because like with YouTube guides, like how much of this stuff is, I don't even know how much of this is outdated now. How much of this is still showing up in the algorithm? If I Google like the best necromech farm, am I going to get a proper guide on that, or is it going to be outdated? So that is pretty tough. And that is, I think if you do have a friend who is an active Warframe player, if you learn yourself first, go solo, start doing activity and go, oh my God, this is taking a while. Then send them a text message going, is this the best way to farm this? Is there a better way? And then hopefully they have the answer. I don't really think there is a solution, or that there needs to be a solution for this. This is the kind of game it is that you're going to have to do some Googling. You're going to have to use the wiki. You're going to hopefully just be inquisitive and come across a barrier and something that takes too long and just question whether there is a quicker way to do it, and then hopefully find that solution. Also, hey, jump into the YouTube streams and the Twitch streams and ask, because my community loves giving out information. You can, and I usually, if I spot new players in my chat, I will ask the question on stream too, so you can work it out. So maybe that's the solution. Yeah, there you go. Nice plug. Come watch me live streams. The new war is I'm probably playing it right now if you're watching this video. All right, thanks for joining. If you'd like to support the channel and cannot think of a comment, you can just leave a comment saying Warframe, new player experience in Warframe, something like that. Any comments and likes would be greatly appreciated. I will see you next time. Bye-bye. Do you want these weekly videos? My weekly Warframe update videos? Maybe. Bye-bye.